You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your educational journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Conflict in organizations is inevitable, but whether it becomes destructive or constructive often depends on how it is assessed. Conflict assessment is the discipline of diagnosing what a disagreement is really about, how heated it has become, and at what level it lives. Without assessment, leaders risk applying one-size-fits-all responses, such as forcing consensus or avoiding the issue altogether, which may trivialize serious differences or inflame minor tensions. A structured diagnostic creates proportionate, effective responses. It prevents overreaction to a small process glitch and ensures that deeper values clashes are not disguised as task disagreements. By clarifying type, level, and intensity, conflict assessment reduces wasted time and emotional drain while preserving trust. Think of it like a doctor diagnosing before prescribing. Only by understanding the illness can the right treatment be chosen. Conflict assessment provides that diagnosis, guiding interventions that heal instead of harm. A conflict taxonomy provides the first step in assessment, helping distinguish between task, process, relationship, and values conflicts. Task conflicts center on what should be done, such as which feature to prioritize. Process conflicts focus on how work is carried out, perhaps disputes over meeting cadence or tool choice. Relationship conflicts emerge when personalities clash or communication styles irritate, while values conflicts arise when deeply held principles differ, such as debates over privacy versus monetization. Each type requires a different tool. Process disagreements may be solved with clearer workflow rules, while values clashes may need structured dialogue or principled decision-making. Without this taxonomy, leaders risk misclassification. Treating a values conflict as a task issue can trivialize the depth of disagreement. By categorizing carefully, organizations prevent wasted effort and reduce frustration, ensuring that interventions respect the true nature of the conflict at hand. Level of analysis is equally vital. Conflict lives at multiple layers: intrapersonal, interpersonal, intra-team, inter-team, and organizational. Intrapersonal conflict may involve a person torn between competing priorities. Interpersonal conflict occurs between two individuals, while intra-team conflict affects group cohesion. Intra-team conflict often reflects competing incentives between departments, such as engineering and sales, and organizational conflict arises when structures, policies, or culture drive friction. Knowing the level prevents misplaced fixes. For example, coaching may resolve interpersonal issues, but only structural change can address organizational misalignment. Consider a scenario where operations resents products' ambitious promises. The issue is not personal but systemic, rooted in goal setting. Assessing level ensures proportional response, resolving locally where possible, but recognizing when higher-level intervention is necessary. This clarity helps organizations avoid chasing symptoms and instead focus energy where it truly belongs, reducing recurrence and strengthening trust. Assessing heat and risk gauges how intense and consequential a conflict has become. Heat refers to emotional energy. Calm disagreement differs from sarcastic exchanges or shouting. Risk captures stakes and time sensitivity. Will this disagreement delay a launch, compromise safety, or damage trust with customers? Heat and risk together inform whether to de-escalate first or move directly into structured resolution. For example, a high-heat, low-risk conflict might benefit from a timeout and reframing, while a low-heat, high-risk issue may require immediate decision-making. Ignoring heat risks escalation, while ignoring risk leads to costly surprises. A balanced assessment allows proportionate action, calming tempers before exploring options, or prioritizing urgent resolution over emotional repair when stakes are high. By naming heat and risk explicitly, leaders reduce guesswork and choose interventions that address both urgency and human impact. Signals and symptoms provide observable indicators of misalignment beneath the surface. These may include repeated rework, missed handoffs, sarcastic comments, awkward silences, or decision churn where agreements unravel. Like medical symptoms, they hint at deeper conditions but must be interpreted carefully. For instance, silence in meetings may suggest disengagement, fear, or simply reflection. By inventorying signals systematically, teams can detect conflict early, before it explodes. Patterns matter. A single missed handoff may be noise, but repeated ones suggest systemic misalignment. Conflict assessment that captures signals objectively reduces reliance on assumptions about intent. It also provides evidence for intervention, making the case for facilitation or policy change. Over time, this practice builds awareness. Teams learn to see signals as data, not as irritants, and address issues before they harden into crises. Interests versus positions framing helps uncover the true drivers of conflict. A position is what someone demands. We need more staff. While an interest reveals the need beneath it. Perhaps we need realistic workload to preserve quality. Positions can appear zero-sum, but interests often allow creative options. For example, if one team demands exclusive resources, their interest may be reliability, which could be met through better tooling rather than more headcount. By surfacing interests, conflict assessment expands the solution space beyond apparent impasses. It also reduces defensiveness, as people feel their needs are understood rather than dismissed. Misidentifying positions as immutable can lock teams into stalemates, while interest-based framing reopens collaboration. This distinction transforms negotiation from tug-of-war to joint problem-solving, creating outcomes that meet underlying needs without eroding trust. It reframes conflict as opportunity, a chance to understand what truly matters beneath stated demands. Data quality checks prevent conflicts from escalating over assumptions, stale metrics, or conflicting evidence. Disagreements often appear sharper than they are because parties rely on different datasets or outdated reports. For example, sales may argue that adoption is strong, citing last quarter's numbers, while operations sees declining usage in current telemetry. Without clarifying facts, debates devolve into he said, she said. Conflict assessment pauses to ask, what do we know for certain, what is disputed, and what data is missing? This framing allows energy to be directed toward validation rather than accusation. It also creates shared accountability. Rather than blaming one side's interpretation, both commit to checking evidence. Over time, embedding data checks into conflict assessment reduces recurrence of data-fueled arguments, improves credibility of decisions, and reinforces a culture where truth is pursued collaboratively, not competitively. Power and asymmetry assessment highlights how authority, expertise, and social identity dynamics shape conflict. In many disputes, what is said matters less than who is heard. A junior engineer may see flaws in a design but feel unsafe to speak, while an executive's opinion may carry undue weight even without evidence. Expertise also influences asymmetry. A compliance officer may dominate a discussion because others lack legal knowledge. Social identity factors, such as gender, culture, or role seniority, further affect who interrupts and whose ideas are credited. Assessing these dynamics prevents misdiagnosis. Silence may reflect lack of safety, not agreement. By recognizing asymmetry, facilitators can create conditions for fair participation, ensuring dissent is heard. Over time, this assessment strengthens equity, reduces resentment, and ensures conflicts are resolved based on merit, not hierarchy or bias. It embeds fairness into resolution, making outcomes more trusted and durable. Cultural and communication style differences often underlie apparent conflicts. Norms about directness, turn-taking, or timing vary across cultures and teams. For example, in some cultures, interrupting is seen as engagement, while in others it signals disrespect. Similarly, long silences may mean deep thought or discomfort, depending on style. Without awareness, these misreads escalate. One side perceives rudeness, the other sees disengagement. Conflict assessment accounts for these factors, correcting misinterpretations before they spiral. Facilitators can reframe, saying, "In this group, silence often means reflection. Let's pause to invite comments." This sensitivity reduces false positives, where style clashes masquerade as substantive disagreements. Over time, cultural awareness builds adaptability, helping diverse teams navigate differences respectfully. It ensures that conflict assessments capture real issues, not noise created by mismatched styles, preserving energy for resolving substantive misalignment. Structural contributors often drive conflict more than personalities. Poorly defined roles, unclear dependencies, or unfair resource allocations create predictable collisions. For example, if two teams share responsibility for incident response without clear handoff rules, tension is inevitable. Blaming individuals ignores the system flaws that set them up for conflict. Structural assessment asks, are incentives aligned, are workflows clear, and are resources adequate? By diagnosing structural issues, organizations can redesign systems rather than scapegoating people. This approach reduces recurrence, as fixes address root causes. Over time, structural awareness shifts culture. Teams recognize that many conflicts are symptoms of design flaws, not moral failings. It normalizes systemic improvement as a resolution pathway, making conflict less personal and more constructive. Structural contributors, once identified, can be adjusted to prevent future collisions, embedding resilience into organizational design. Policy and guardrail reviews clarify whether decision rights, definitions, or escalation paths are missing. Many conflicts arise not from disagreement about purpose, but from ambiguity about who decides, when work is done, or how to escalate issues. For example, if one team believes they own final approval on releases while another assumes shared authority, conflict is inevitable. Assessing these guardrails surfaces whether the vision is clear, policies are current, or escalation paths are functional. Fixing ambiguity often resolves conflict immediately by restoring shared expectations. Over time, this practice reduces recurring disputes as teams learn to trust that policies provide clarity. It also prevents escalation into heated arguments by making the rules of engagement explicit. Guardrail assessment reinforces alignment. Conflict is less about who is right and more about clarifying how decisions are meant to flow. Bias and attribution awareness prevents conflict from being fueled by misjudgments about intent. Humans are prone to the fundamental attribution error. Assuming others, behavior reflects character rather than context. For example, a missed deadline may be labeled as laziness rather than the result of unrealistic workload. Conflict assessment teaches teams to pause and ask, what external factors might explain this behavior? Attribution bias can inflame conflicts unnecessarily, as motives are misread. By surfacing context, facilitators reduce hostility and invite empathy. Over time, bias awareness shifts culture from blame to curiosity, making conflicts more about fixing systems than labeling people. It encourages a mindset of what conditions created this outcome, rather than what's wrong with them. This shift not only de-escalates disputes, but also produces more accurate diagnoses, leading to fairer and more effective solutions. Historical context often shapes present conflicts. Past incidents, broken promises, or unresolved grievances color current perceptions. For example, if a team has repeatedly been told their concerns would be addressed but saw no action, even small new disputes are interpreted cynically. Conflict assessment acknowledges this residue, capturing prior events and how they shape willingness to cooperate. Without this step, interventions may fail because they ignore trust deficits. Recognizing history also provides an opportunity for repair. Apologies, acknowledgments, or structural changes that demonstrate learning. Over time, attention to context prevents patterns of unresolved tension from festering. It demonstrates respect for stakeholders, lived experiences, reinforcing trust. By integrating history, conflict assessment ensures that resolution addresses not just the immediate issue, but also the backdrop that amplifies or distorts it, making outcomes more durable and accepted. Confidentiality and safety safeguards are essential during conflict assessment. Vulnerable participants must trust that sharing concerns will not worsen exposure. For example, raising issues about bias or harassment requires protected channels, anonymized reporting, or trusted facilitators. Without safety, candor is impossible, and assessments are distorted by silence. Safeguards include clear confidentiality rules, careful selection of forums, and assurance that sensitive disclosures follow ethical procedures. This protection allows conflicts to be surfaced fully, even when stakes are high. Over time, consistent safety practices build trust, encouraging earlier disclosure of tensions and reducing escalation. By embedding safeguards, organizations signal seriousness and responsibility. Conflict assessment then becomes a safe diagnostic process, not a risky exposure. This foundation enables honest dialogue, ensuring that interventions are based on complete, authentic information rather than censored fragments. Misclassification risks highlight the importance of careful diagnosis. Treating a values conflict as a task dispute trivializes the depth of disagreement, leading to frustration and disengagement. Conversely, inflating a simple process issue into a cultural battle wastes time and energy. Misclassification also affects tool choice. Facilitation may resolve a task issue but inflame a values clash. Conflict assessment trains leaders to slow down, clarify type, level, and intensity before choosing interventions. By acknowledging misclassification risks, organizations prevent wasted effort and resentment. Over time, this discipline builds credibility. People trust that conflicts are handled proportionately, not forced into mismatched frameworks. Careful classification ensures that energy is invested where it truly belongs, making resolution faster, fairer, and more durable. It reinforces the principle that not all conflicts are equal, and only careful diagnosis produces the right response. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Triage outcomes provide the bridge between assessment and action. Once type, level, and intensity are identified, the next step is to select the appropriate pathway: de-escalation, facilitation, mediation, or formal decision authority. De-escalation is best when heat is high but stakes are low, calming emotions before logic can prevail. Facilitation works when teams need structure to talk productively, while mediation brings in neutral third parties when relationships are deeply strained. Decision authority applies when time is critical or stakes too high for prolonged debate. For example, during a looming launch, an executive may need to decide quickly after gathering perspectives, while a low-stakes process dispute can wait for facilitated dialogue. By matching pathways proportionately, triage prevents overreaction or neglect. Over time, consistent triage builds trust. Participants know conflicts are neither ignored nor escalated unnecessarily, but addressed with the right degree of structure and authority. Facilitation readiness checks protect against fruitless discussions. Too often, groups are brought together without clear agendas, decision rights, or definitions of success. Conflict assessment ensures these foundations are in place before convening. Readiness means knowing who has authority to decide, what outcomes are sought, and how success will be measured. For example, a meeting to resolve scope disputes should clarify whether the group is recommending options or making final commitments. Without this clarity, discussions spiral, producing frustration and further erosion of trust. Readiness checks also establish psychological safety rules, such as respectful listening and time for quieter voices. Over time, these practices reduce wasted effort and strengthen credibility of facilitated sessions. When groups see that conflicts are addressed with structure and seriousness, they are more likely to engage openly. Facilitation readiness ensures that resolution attempts are not only well-intentioned, but genuinely productive. Evidence-gathering plans reduce reliance on memory battles and partial perspectives. Conflicts often intensify when people argue from anecdote, assuming their experience represents the whole truth. By planning what evidence to collect, logs, metrics, stakeholder interviews, or historical records assessments ground resolution in shared facts. For example, if operations and development dispute release quality, defect logs, and incident reports provide context. Validation is critical. Evidence must be recent, relevant, and agreed upon as credible. Plans should also identify gaps, clarifying what remains unknown. Evidence gathering reframes debate from personal blame to shared inquiry, creating a sense of fairness. Over time, this discipline builds confidence in decisions, as outcomes rest on validated data rather than dominance of voice. It also creates reusable artifacts, strengthening organizational memory for future assessments. Evidence plans transform conflict from subjective argument into collective problem-solving anchored in reality. De-escalation techniques provide breathing space when emotions run hot. High heat reduces reasoning, narrows perspectives, and raises defensiveness. Techniques such as timeouts, reframing issues, and separating people from problems restore calm. For example, a heated meeting may be paused, allowing participants to regroup before continuing. Reframing can shift language from blame, "you missed deadlines," to systems our handoff process created bottlenecks. Separating personalities from issues emphasizes that conflict is about processes or needs, not character flaws. De-escalation is not avoidance, it is preparation for meaningful dialogue. By lowering intensity, it creates conditions where constructive reasoning can resume. Over time, these techniques normalize conflict as manageable, not catastrophic. Teams learn that heat is a signal to pause, not to escalate. De-escalation practices build resilience, ensuring disagreements can be worked through without lasting damage to relationships or trust. Option generation guidance helps groups move beyond entrenched positions. After assessment and de-escalation, the goal is to identify multiple viable solutions. Guidance emphasizes fairness, feasibility, and reversibility. For example, instead of arguing over two rigid options, ship now or delay indefinitely, a team might generate incremental approaches, such as limited release with rollback capability. Testing options for fairness ensures all parties' interests are considered, feasibility checks align with capacity, and reversibility prevents fear of irreversible mistakes. Generating diverse options also reduces zero-sum dynamics, where one side must lose. Over time, this practice shifts culture from confrontation to collaboration. Teams learn to explore creative possibilities rather than defend rigid positions. Option generation broadens the solution space, making agreements more durable and satisfying. It reframes conflict as an opportunity to innovate, not just compromise. BATNA awareness, understanding each side's best alternative to a negotiated agreement, protects against fragile or coerced settlements. In conflicts, parties may agree under pressure but resist afterward if they feel trapped. By clarifying walkaway points, assessments ensure that agreements are voluntary and sustainable. For example, a vendor may accept tighter deadlines only if certain risk mitigations are provided. Without that, their BATNA is to decline the contract. Knowing BATNAs helps facilitators assess power balance and fairness. It also prevents escalation. When each side understands the other's fallback, they can design solutions that meet needs without coercion. Over time, BATNA awareness builds maturity as teams negotiate transparently rather than posturing. It ensures agreements are not only reached but kept, reinforcing trust. By grounding negotiations in realistic alternatives, conflict resolution becomes more credible, durable, and fair. Escalation protocols ensure that conflicts do not linger unresolved or spiral into paralysis. They define when higher authority should be involved, who that authority is, and how escalation should occur. Protocols preserve local autonomy by encouraging teams to resolve disputes where possible, but provide a safety net when deadlock threatens critical outcomes. For example, a product engineering standoff over scope may escalate to a portfolio steering group, if deadlines loom. Clear protocols prevent escalation from being seen as failure. Instead, it is a planned step in resolution. Over time, protocols reduce frustration, as participants know that conflicts will not fester indefinitely. They also protect relationships, as escalation is treated as structural, not personal. By embedding clear pathways, organizations ensure that conflicts are resolved in timeframes that match stakes, preserving flow and trust across the system. Documentation and transparency are critical to resolution credibility. Recording issues, options, decisions, and rationales ensures accountability and provides artifacts for later learning. For example, documenting why a decision was made to delay a release helps future teams avoid revisiting the same conflict without context. Transparency also reduces suspicion. Participants know their perspectives were heard, even if not adopted. Public documentation creates consistency, reinforcing that conflicts are addressed systematically, not arbitrarily. Over time, this builds institutional trust as teams see patterns of reasoned, recorded decisions. It also strengthens organizational learning, as documented conflicts feed back into policy and process updates. Without transparency, resolutions risk being misremembered or misrepresented, fueling new disputes. Documentation turns conflict from a private struggle into a shared learning opportunity, embedding fairness and accountability into organizational memory. Remote conflict assessment norms adapt resolution to distributed settings. Written pre-reads ensure participants arrive with shared context, structured rounds prevent dominance in virtual meetings, and moderated threads allow thoughtful contributions without heat spikes. For example, a facilitator may require each participant to provide written input before discussion, reducing interruptions and bias. Recordings and transcripts provide transparency for absent stakeholders. These norms prevent remote conflict from escalating due to misreads of tone, lag, or exclusion. Over time, distributed friendly practices increase inclusivity and fairness, ensuring all voices are represented regardless of geography. They also reduce heat, as structured channels discourage reactive outbursts. Remote norms make conflict assessment scalable across global teams, embedding rhythm and trust into virtual collaboration. They ensure that distance is no barrier to fairness, credibility, or effective resolution. Compliance and ethics alignment ensures that sensitive conflicts are addressed responsibly. Topics like harassment, discrimination, or safety risks cannot be handled solely through informal facilitation. They require formal procedures, documentation, and protective measures. Conflict assessment recognizes when issues cross into mandated domains, triggering legal or ethical protocols. At the same time, humane support, such as safe reporting channels and empathetic facilitation, ensures that processes are not dehumanizing. For example, a harassment allegation must follow compliance steps but also provide personal support for those affected. Over time, this alignment builds trust. Stakeholders know that serious matters are handled with both rigor and care. It protects organizations from liability while reinforcing cultural integrity. Compliance alignment ensures that conflict resolution does not compromise ethics in the name of speed, preserving both humanity and accountability in difficult circumstances. Measuring resolution quality provides evidence that assessments are working. Indicators include recurrence rates. Are the same conflicts reappearing? Decision latency? How long does it take to resolve? Engagement signals. Are participants candid? And rework tied to the conflict's domain. For example, if rework decreases after a scope dispute is resolved, resolution quality is validated. Measurement prevents complacency. Not all conflict interventions succeed, and without tracking, organizations cannot improve. Over time, metrics refine practice, showing which tools work best for which types of conflict. They also build stakeholder confidence, proving that conflict assessment produces tangible benefits. Quality measurement shifts resolution from ad hoc improvisation to disciplined practice. It demonstrates that conflict can be managed as rigorously as delivery, embedding fairness and accountability into organizational performance systems. Anti-pattern awareness protects against behaviors that undermine resolution. Side-channel lobbying, where participants influence decisions privately, erodes trust. Winner-loser framing fuels resentment, while agree in the room, resist afterward sabotages implementation. Conflict assessment calls out these patterns explicitly, replacing them with commit or revisit rules. For example, participants agree that once decisions are documented, they are either committed to or formally reopened, not quietly resisted. Over time, anti-pattern vigilance strengthens credibility, as resolutions are honored consistently. It prevents conflict from becoming a stage for politics or performance, instead reinforcing fairness. By embedding awareness into rhythm, organizations sustain trust that conflict resolution is principled, not manipulated. Anti-pattern vigilance preserves integrity, ensuring that conflicts are resolved in ways that strengthen culture rather than corrode it. Learning integration ensures that structural insights from conflicts feed back into system design. Many disputes reveal gaps in roles, policies, or rhythms that, if unaddressed, will repeat. Conflict assessment identifies these root contributors and ensures they are captured for improvement. For example, if repeated scope disputes stem from unclear decision rights, policies are updated to clarify authority. Learning integration prevents recurrence by addressing conditions, not just incidents. It also signals respect. Participants see their struggles translated into systemic improvements, not forgotten. Over time, this feedback loop strengthens resilience, as each conflict leaves the organization stronger and clearer. Learning integration turns conflict from wasted energy into fuel for organizational evolution, embedding trust and adaptability. It ensures that conflict assessment contributes not just to resolution, but to lasting capability growth. Success definition confirms whether conflict assessment achieved its aims. Success is measured not by absence of disagreement, but by proportionate action, reduced heat, clearer agreements, and improved outcomes. For example, a team may continue to debate scope, but with less emotion, clearer data, and faster decisions. Recurrence declines, rework decreases, and trust strengthens. Success also includes cultural impact. Participants feel heard, dissent is safe, and decisions stick. By defining success explicitly, organizations avoid superficial measures such as no complaints. Instead, they focus on durability, trust, and flow. Over time, clear success definitions build confidence, proving that conflict assessment is worth the effort. It transforms conflict from a liability into a managed process that strengthens relationships and outcomes. Success becomes the demonstration that friction, when carefully diagnosed and proportionately addressed, produces alignment rather than division. Conflict assessment synthesis emphasizes that durable resolution requires careful diagnosis, proportionate routes, and structural follow-through. By classifying type and level, gauging heat and risk, and surfacing interests beneath positions, organizations ensure conflicts are understood before interventions are chosen. Triage directs disputes into appropriate channels, while facilitation, de-escalation, and mediation provide tools to match intensity. Evidence, documentation, and compliance alignment preserve fairness and accountability. Anti-pattern vigilance and learning integration transform disputes into sources of improvement, embedding resilience into structures and culture. Success is defined by reduced recurrence, faster decision-making, and stronger trust, proving that conflict, managed well, strengthens rather than fractures organizations. Done with discipline, conflict assessment converts friction into flow, ensuring that disagreements become opportunities for learning and alignment rather than destructive divides. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.